Where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, hit subscribe so you'll never miss the most courageous dog tales we share every day. This story begins in a peaceful town, where a retired K9 and his partner uncover a truth so chilling it shatters the town's innocence and forces them to face a ghost from the past. A ghost that everyone, including them, had failed to see. The first thing you need to know about Officer Leo Vance isn't that he was a cop. No, the first thing you need to know is that he was a dog owner. And his dog, a gentle, barrel-chested Labrador named Max, was the real hero of our story. Max was the heart and soul of Havenwood, a small town where the air smelled of freshly cut pine and the distant Clearwater River. For 15 years, Havenwood had been a quiet paradise, a place so safe the biggest news was usually a lost cat or the high school football team's latest win. Leo and Max, his legendary K9 partner, were a symbol of that peace. They worked the night shift, their bond forged over years of quiet patrols, shared sandwiches, and unspoken understanding. But 2 years ago, Max retired. His muzzle had turned silver, his joints were a little stiff, and his days of chasing suspects were over. Now his biggest mission was a morning walk with Leo down to the river, a place where he could simply be a dog. You know that feeling when everything is just normal. That's how this morning started. The summer sun was just beginning to burn off the soft fog that hung over the Clearwater. Leo, sipping a lukewarm coffee, was watching Max sniff a patch of wild daisies. It was a perfect, ordinary moment, and that's when everything changed. In a split second, the old K9 training kicked in. Max's body, usually slow and relaxed, went rigid. His ears perked up, his tail went stiff as a board, and his nose dropped low, inhaling the air like he was reading a book only he could understand. It was a look Leo hadn't seen in 2 years, a look of pure, focused intensity. "What is it, boy?" Leo murmured, but he already knew. This wasn't a squirrel, this wasn't a jogger. Max had locked onto something, and before Leo could even drop his coffee cup, Max was gone. He bolted down the muddy river trail, his powerful legs pumping like pistons, a retired hero on a mission no one had assigned him. Leo, a man who had faced down armed suspects without flinching, stumbled after him, a knot of dread tightening in his stomach. He watched in disbelief as Max, a dog who should have been too old for this, plunged into the fast-moving Clearwater. He wasn't splashing. He wasn't playing. He was swimming with a fierce, determined stroke, cutting through the current like a well-oiled machine. Leo's heart stopped cold when he saw it, a dark, heavy shape bobbing in the water a few feet ahead of Max. It was a suitcase waterlogged and rectangular, fighting to sink beneath the surface. Max reached it, clamped his jaws around the handle, and began the slow, arduous paddle back to shore. He dropped the case at Leo's feet, soaked and smelling of river muck, and something else, something metallic and sickly sweet that made Leo's stomach churn. Leo knelt beside his dog, his hands trembling as he touched the corroded zipper. "Good boy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. He knew with a certainty that chilled him to the bone that this was no ordinary piece of lost luggage. This was a secret, an echo of a past that Havenwood had tried to bury. He unzipped the case just enough to peer inside, and that's when the peace of their morning and the tranquility of their town shattered into a million pieces. Inside, among the mud and algae, was a child's pink and white striped blanket and a small pink sneaker. Leo's breath caught in his throat. He knew that blanket. He knew that shoe. They belonged to a little girl named Madison Lake, who had vanished from a picnic 8 years ago. Everyone had assumed she had drowned in the very same river. But Max's discovery revealed a brutal, impossible truth: the river hadn't taken Madison. It had simply been hiding her. Leo stood up, the weight of the suitcase feeling heavier than a boulder. He was just a retired cop and his old dog, but he had just uncovered a ghost, and this ghost wasn't going to stay buried. He looked at Max, who was sitting beside the case like a soldier guarding a secret. And in that moment, he knew his days of quiet retirement were over. He had to make the call. The town of Havenwood was about to learn that its innocence was just a facade, and the truth was a far more terrifying monster than anyone had ever imagined. This discovery was a shocking plot twist for the town and for Leo, but it was just the first domino to fall. It was the first breadcrumb on a long, dark trail that would lead them to a horrifying truth about a serial predator who had been hiding in plain sight for decades. The discovery of the suitcase was more than just a shocking plot twist for Leo Vance. It was a punch to the gut, a cold, hard reminder of a case that had haunted him for 8 long years. As the forensic team swarmed the riverbank, their movements precise and detached. Leo stood frozen, holding Max's collar tight. Everyone else saw a potential crime scene. Leo saw a failure. He saw Madison Lake's smiling face on a missing persons flyer, a case that had gone cold, a life everyone had written off as a tragic drowning. But Max, the dog who had found the suitcase, saw something else. He sat by Leo's side, his ears perked, his eyes fixed on the moving river. He seemed to be saying, "Don't just stare at the evidence. Look closer. The river isn't the monster here. It's just a hiding place." That's the thing about our pasts. We file them away, put them in a box labeled unsolved, and hope time will dull the ache. But sometimes a single event, a single discovery can rip that box open and force us to confront what we thought was over. For Leo, that box was the file on Madison Lake's disappearance. The town had moved on. The Lake family had moved on. But Max, it seemed, never did. Back at the precinct, the atmosphere was a mix of quiet disbelief and frantic activity. The suitcase was the talk of the station, but no one had an answer. And when the medical examiner's preliminary report came back, the mystery deepened. The shoe size was for a 3 or 4-year-old younger than Madison was when she disappeared. The case wasn't about an old tragedy. It was about a different nightmare entirely. This is a mistake we often make as humans. We see what we expect to see. Leo went into the precinct, expecting to solve a single 8-year-old case. But the evidence was telling him a different story, a much bigger one. It was a story of a monster, not a natural disaster. That's when Leo with Max curled at his feet, pulled out not just one case file, but 7 others. He started connecting the dots that no one had ever thought to link. He created a wall full of old photos, maps, and reports. And there, staring back at him, was a chilling pattern. All the cases involved children who disappeared in the summer between the ages of 3 and 6, and all vanished near water access points during community events. And then he found it. The needle in the haystack. The detail everyone had missed. In the background of a grainy photo from a 2012 case, he saw him, a middle-aged man with a fishing vest and a beard. A phantom, a silent figure in the background. Leo checked another photo from a different case years later. Same man. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't a theory. It was a pattern, a ghost that everyone had overlooked. The man was hiding in plain sight, using the river as a perfect alibi, a place where people assumed the worst was swallowed up by the current. "This isn't about the river," Leo whispered to Max, running a hand over the dog's fur. "It's about whoever's been using it as a graveyard." He finally understood what Max had been trying to tell him all those years ago when they were still on the force. Max had barked like crazy at the riverbank, but Leo had seen nothing. No evidence, no scent path. He had failed to listen to his most trusted partner. But he wouldn't fail this time. The puzzle pieces were finally clicking into place, and the picture they formed was terrifying. A serial predator had been hunting in this community for 2 decades, and the town's beloved river had been his accomplice. And as Leo looked at his wall, at the maps and the photos and the connections, he realized something else. The Havenwood Summer Jamboree was only a week away. The predator, who always strikes during crowded events, would be there. He looked down at Max, who was watching him with those same sharp, intelligent eyes. The hunt had just begun, and the prey was a monster. The quiet town of Havenwood was about to learn a lesson in just how fragile its peace truly was. The wall in Leo's office had become a web of connections, a terrifying constellation of cold cases and hidden truths. Every photo, every map, every red-penciled circle screamed the same thing. This was not a coincidence. This was a plan. And it was time to find the man behind it. Leo's gut feeling, now backed by an undeniable pattern, led him to an old church just outside of town. It was a place called Rivers of Mercy, a building that had been abandoned for years and was all but forgotten by the town. But Leo remembered a detail from a decades-old witness statement. A witness had seen a man matching the suspect's description near a riverside baptism at a Pentecostal church, and this church was right at that spot. As Leo drove to the location, the suspense tightened its grip. Max lay in the back of the SUV, his eyes sharp, his body tense. He knew this wasn't a casual drive. He could feel the purpose, the rising stakes. The old church sat tucked away behind tall pines, its peeling paint and crooked cross a stark contrast to the beautiful river it overlooked. The gate was locked, but a sense of unease hung in the still air. Leo called out, "PD! Anyone here?" There was no answer, only the sound of crickets and the rustle of leaves. He radioed for backup, but a cold dread told him he couldn't wait. He and Max were on their own. They made their way to the back of the building where the scent of decay and old wood was strongest. Max, true to his instincts, led Leo directly to a padlocked cellar door hidden among rotting wood and thick vines. The padlock was new. This wasn't an abandoned cellar. This was an active secret. With a deep breath and a determined kick, Leo broke the lock. As the door creaked open, a foul odor of mildew and something far worse. Chemicals and decay wafted out. He shined his flashlight into the darkness, revealing an old cot, a shelf of canned food and books, and on the far wall a series of crayon drawings. A rainbow, a sad face, a name written over and over in a child's clumsy hand, Jules. Leo staggered back, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm. This wasn't just a hiding place. This was a holding room. He immediately radioed for a full forensics team, but the most shocking twist was yet to come. Back at the station, as forensics collected evidence from the cellar, Leo pored over his research. He learned that the church had been purchased years ago by a retired prison chaplain named Leonard Frey. Frey seemed like a perfect suspect. He matched some of the descriptions, had a history of working with troubled people, and was a loner. However, a closer look at the evidence shattered this theory. The handwriting in the killer's meticulous journals, which Max later helped them discover hidden in a maintenance shed, didn't match Frey's. The journals detailed 23 years of crimes with chillingly cold precision. The killer was methodical, obsessive, a planner. Frey, according to reports, was a quiet loner, but not this kind of methodical. The logs belonged to someone else, a far more dangerous individual. The predator wasn't just one person. Frey was a piece of the puzzle, an unwitting accomplice, or perhaps a willing participant who didn't ask questions. The real killer, the author of the logs, was still out there hiding behind a veil of normalcy, using people like Frey to operate. The man in the fishing vest, the man everyone had overlooked, was a ghost moving in the background, manipulating the board. This revelation was a gut-wrenching turn. The hunter wasn't the man they thought he was. He was an unseen puppet master, and he was still a free man. This was a truth more chilling than any of them could have imagined, because it meant the monster of Havenwood was still living among them, and he was far from finished. The stakes had just been raised, and Leo and Max knew their most dangerous opponent was yet to be found. The true killer was a ghost, a phantom who had eluded capture for decades. But Leo had a partner who could see ghosts. With the help of an old contact, a retired investigator named Marcus Leo cross-referenced the meticulous details from the killer's journals with Old Town records. They finally put a name to the face in the fishing vest, John Jack Marshall, a seemingly harmless retired fairgrounds coordinator. The name was a gut punch. Marshall was known and trusted by everyone. He was the kind of man who would offer a child candy, not a monster who would take their life. This was the most chilling plot twist of all. The man everyone trusted was the one who had been preying on their children for decades. Leo knew the time for waiting was over. He and Max had to confront him. The confrontation happened not in a dark alley or a locked room, but in the most ordinary of places, a secluded trailer on the outskirts of town where Marshall now lived. Leo parked his cruiser and stepped out, the morning air thick with an ominous silence. Max walked beside him, his body tense, his eyes scanning the tree line. As they approached, they found Marshall sitting in a plastic lawn chair sipping from a thermos. He didn't look surprised to see them. "I figured you'd come, sooner or later," he said calmly, his eyes flicking to Max. "The dog's the only one who ever remembered." Leo's heart hammered against his ribs. The man's casual confession was more horrifying than any angry denial. "We know about the church," Leo said, his voice tight. "We found the logs. Jules, Levi Julian. We know." Marshall simply smiled, a humorless, chilling expression. "You all thought it was the water," he mused. "That's the thing with rivers. People want to believe they swallow bad things. That way no one has to ask what really happened." Suddenly a shotgun cocked. Leo spun around just as a second man stepped from the trees. Marshall's nephew, his face pale with adrenaline, the barrel aimed straight at Leo's chest. "Drop it," the man growled. "Drop your weapon now." This was the moment of truth. Leo froze, but Max didn't. The dog, who had been a quiet partner through this entire investigation, lunged, not at the nephew, but to block the line of fire. The gunshot rang out like thunder, and the world seemed to stop. The bullet grazed Max, but it was enough to throw the gunman off his shot. Leo dove low, tackling the nephew hard into the dirt and yanking the weapon away. His hands were shaking as he cuffed the man, but his eyes were on Max. "No, no, no, no," he whispered, falling to his knees beside his dog. Max was still standing, but he was shaking, and a thin line of red was visible on his side. He had saved Leo's life, just as he had been trying to warn him for years. In that heart-stopping moment, the value of loyalty became brutally clear. Max had taken a bullet for his partner, a testament to an unbreakable bond forged in service and trust. He was more than a dog. He was a guardian angel with a badge, a hero who had never given up the fight. Leo looked into Max's eyes and saw not just a partner, but a silent testament to courage, a living embodiment of the lesson that sometimes the most profound acts of bravery come from the quietest of heroes. The shotgun blast was a sound that had echoed through the woods, but it wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the end for John Marshall and his nephew. Backup arrived 6 minutes later, and the old trailer was swarmed with law enforcement forensic teams and a newfound sense of urgency. The ghost who had haunted Havenwood for decades was finally captured. Inside the trailer, investigators found a decades-long chronicle of horror old photographs, locks of hair, and meticulous recordings. The river hadn't been swallowing children. Marshall had. A month later, the town of Havenwood held a quiet memorial at the riverbank. It wasn't a celebration, but a solemn moment of healing. Candles flickered in the fading light. Tears were shed for lives lost, and for the first time in memory, the river felt a little less menacing. Leo stood at the front of the gathering, not in uniform, but in plain clothes, with Max by his side. Max was healing. The bullet had grazed his ribcage, a scar he would carry forever. But he was alive, and his spirit was unbroken. He wore a new custom-fitted vest with a stitched patch, a symbol of his unwavering loyalty and courage. He had saved Leo's life, and in doing so had finally brought peace to a town that had been haunted for decades. Leo looked down at his partner, his eyes filled with gratitude and emotion. "You knew before any of us," he whispered. "You never stopped searching." Max leaned against his leg, his quiet, steady breathing a testament to his heroic heart. He didn't need words. He had always spoken in actions, in loyalty, and in an unbreakable trust. The story of Leo and Max spread far beyond Havenwood. Parents from all over the region came to the station just to shake Leo's hand. Kids drew pictures of the brave Labrador, and a local pet store even sent a giant bag of treats labeled Hero Snacks. The mayor issued a public commendation for unmatched service and dedication to both of them. But Leo didn't care about the headlines or the awards. What mattered was that the river was finally quiet, not because the water had changed, but because the truth had finally risen to the surface. He finally understood the powerful lesson that Max had taught him. Some heroes don't wear capes. They walk on four legs, and their hearts are the truest compass for justice. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey with Leo and Max. Their story reminds us that the bonds we share with our animal companions are more than just companionship. They are partnerships built on trust, loyalty, and an instinct that can often see what we humans miss. It's a story that makes you wonder how many times in our own lives have we missed a warning, a subtle sign from a loved one, because we were too busy looking for a different answer. And what kind of impact do our unsung heroes, both human and animal, have on our lives every single day? What did you think of the story? Was there a moment that stood out to you? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you and reminded you of a special animal in your life, please be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more stories of extraordinary animal heroes and the humans who love them. Your support helps us share these powerful stories with the world.